79% of the population of Western Australia live in Perth. This is the greatest percentage for any of Australia's state capitals. Even higher than for South Australia, which has the excuse that most of the state is desert, so settlement options outside its capital, Adelaide, are more limited. Western Australia also has by far Australia's longest coastline, giving it perhaps the greatest number of options for settlements. This leads to the first fix for the Western Australian economy. Number 1. Develop the regions. Case in point being Eucla, a town on the only southern highway between the eastern states and Western Australia. In the wet season, the highway in the north of the country is often flooded, making this southern road the only highway across the country at these times. Eucla lies at the midpoint between Adelaide and Perth, 14 hours drive from each city. The nearest towns are Norseman, about 7 hours drive to the west, and Ceduna, about 5 hours drive to the east. Thousands of people pass through each week, on their way across the country. This includes many international tourists. Eucla is at the point when the highway from the west first comes within a few kilometres of the coast. Its elevated position enables views across the Great Australian Bight. Eucla is just a few kilometres from the Bunda Cliffs, which form part of the longest uninterrupted line of sea cliffs in the world. Eucla is the point where, when coming from the east, the coast and its beaches first become accessible, after hundreds of kilometres of cliffs. Driving across Canada, the largest developed country in the world, which like Australia, has only one major highway, across the whole south of the country, there are major towns of several thousand people about every 700 kilometres. Like the Adelaide to Perth drive, driving from Adelaide north, to the much smaller capital of the Northern Territory, Darwin also takes around 30 hours. And even though this drive goes right through the deserts of Central Australia, the distance between towns of at least 1,000 people is never more than 700 kilometres. From Adelaide, through Port Augusta, Coober Pedy, Alice Springs, Tennant Creek, Katherine, and then, finishing in Darwin. So back to the western route. The town of Eucla, in its very important location, where the only highway meets the coast, near the point where the 100-metre cliffs give way to kilometres of accessible beaches. Did I mention Eucla also has the perfect climate, with maximums averaging 27 degrees in January and 18 degrees in July. Average rainfall is 320 millimeters, spread fairly evenly throughout the year. How large would you expect this town, with its great climate, and thousands of visitors passing through, to be? 10,000 people? 2,000 people? No. Eucla has a population of just 53 people. And what awaits all the international travelers coming through? A motel with a restaurant attached. A small airstrip used mostly by the Royal Flying Doctors. Come on WA, you can do better. To start with, set up a Visitors Information Centre, to give tourists information on local attractions, such as the Bunda Cliffs, the historic telegraph station, and the Nullarbor. And since this is the entry point for many visitors to your state, why not use it to give visitors information on attractions throughout the whole state? Open a gallery for Indigenous artists, from the area and across the state. Have a museum that shows the history of the Nullarbor and the Great Australian Bight, with photos and paintings of these attractions for sale. Upgrade the airport to allow a connection with Perth, and for scenic flights across the Nullarbor, Bunda Cliffs, Great Australian Bight, and the Great Victoria Desert. In winter you could have whale watching flights. This development will encourage more hotels and restaurants to open, all offering scenic views across to the Great Australian Bight. Number 2. Develop Broome as a gambling destination. Develop a strip of hotels and casinos along Cable Beach, giving sunset views out to the Indian Ocean. Offer special visas and tax incentives to attract casino developers and workers fleeing Macau, as China takes increasing control there. Broome could attract wealthy gamblers from nearby countries where gambling is illegal, such as Malaysia and Indonesia. Broome is just a 3 to 4 hour flight from much of these countries' populations. Number 3. Develop Carnarvon as international resort. Carnarvon has a dry climate, with perfect temperatures year-round. It is close to many natural attractions, including Monkey Mia, Ningaloo Reef, Kalbarri National Park, Cape Range National Park, Coral Bay, and Kennedy Range National Park. Scenic flights could depart from Carnarvon Airport and showcase the Ningaloo Reef and Kennedy Range National Park. Ferries could operate from Carnarvon to Monkey Mia, Ningaloo Reef, and Coral Bay. Number 4. Medium speed rail. A network of medium-speed rail lines should be developed between Perth and Albany, Geraldton and Margaret River. Medium-speed rail of 200 km an hour will put these towns within around 2 hours of Perth. Given that people are likely to be working from home most days, in future, settling in these areas, and in towns along the rail routes, will become a more attractive option. Number 5. Establish Perth as a direct hub for European flights. Qantas began flying directly between London and Perth in 2018. This flight takes 17 hours. Other popular destinations for Australian and New Zealand travellers include Istanbul, Athens, Larnaca, and Moscow. The flight time between Perth and Athens would be 15 hours and 45 minutes. Perth to Istanbul flights would take 15 hours 25 minutes. The flight time between Perth and Larnaca would be 14 hours and 35 minutes. Perth to Moscow flights would take 15 hours 40 minutes. Perth could serve as a stopover for travellers to these cities, from Australia's east coast and New Zealand. This would also serve to raise the profile of Perth, as a potential travel destination among Turks, Greeks, Russians and Cypriots. Has your country been hit hard by the coronavirus? Does its economy need a fix? Let me know in the comments which country to look at next. And if you want to see more of these videos, don't forget to like and subscribe.